Comparative analysis of authoritarian and democratic systems. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Why does it only take 1 year for some countries to build a high-speed railway? And some countries have to fight in parliament for 10 years to build an airport? Why do some places seem to be efficient and prosperous, but people often feel an indescribable anxiety and suffocation? Today we are going to talk about one of the most controversial topics on the internet, and the most likely to make people quarrel with each other. The ultimate battle between authoritarian and democratic systems. Whether you are interested in politics or not, this video will completely subvert your understanding of state machinery. Because this underlying architecture determines the balance in your wallet all the time, and the fate of your next generation. Before we start the in-depth dismantling, we must first clarify 3 concepts that are often confused. If you compare the country to a company, these 3 systems have set completely different life scripts for you. The difference between totalitarianism, authoritarianism, and democracy. Totalitarian system: this is a fully enclosed, sterile room. Not only can you not decide how much money you make, you can't even decide what books you read, what songs you listen to. Whatever comes to mind must be handed over as required. Authoritarian system: this is more like a curtained room. You have a certain degree of freedom in life and finance. You can make money like crazy, buy houses and stocks. But you can never pull back the curtains to see who designed and controlled the house. Democratic institutions: it is a noisy open square. You can stand in the audience and yell at the manager on stage that he is a fool. And with enough numbers, you can legally remove him from power. Totalitarian systems have been almost a death sentence in human history. In this model, the ruling group always enjoys paradise, while the people at the bottom often live in hell. What it does best is not to develop the economy, but to create myths and mass-produce fear. So let us not waste our time on it today. What we really want to compare in depth is authoritarianism and democracy. The fatal temptation of authoritarian systems. Why do many people today still find authoritarian systems really delicious? Because the dopamine it provides in the short term is so intense. Ultimate decision-making efficiency when encountering a major project or crisis. It can directly skip the long arguments and compromises and build a park overnight. Or order the entire city to be cordoned off. Reassuring stability: no noisy elections. No dizzying regime changes for those who crave stability above all else. It's a huge sense of security. Highly decorated sense of neatness, because the media is only responsible for praise. Negative news is accurately cut out, and what ordinary people see every day is an edited version of the peaceful times. If you think of the country as a huge IT system, an authoritarian system is like a fully configured single-node server. When things are going smoothly, it has no extra communication overhead, and all computing resources are used for sprinting. The economic data and infrastructure miracles that came out are enough to amaze the whole world. The hidden abyss of authoritarian systems. But there is no free lunch in the world behind the efficiency of the authoritarian system. There are hidden long-term and fatal structural costs. The fault tolerance rate is almost zero. No one can be wise forever. When misjudgments occur at the highest levels of decision-making due to the lack of checks and balances, such as an independent judiciary, free media, and opposition parties, this mistake will be followed through to the end. Pressure conduction barrier lake. The gap between rich and poor, resource monopoly and injustice at the bottom cannot be released through votes and demonstrations. The only way to suppress it is by deleting posts and banning people. The calmer it is on the surface, the more dangerous the pressure cooker is underground. Chronic depletion of innovation capabilities. True disruptive innovation requires not only funding. What is more needed is a collision of ideas without any taboos and on a track where even speaking requires careful consideration of every word. It is difficult to give birth to a genius who truly leads the times. An authoritarian system is like a supercar with a welded accelerator. No one could catch up when running in a straight line, but its steering wheel was stuck. What is even scarier is that it doesn't have a braking system at all. The biggest risk for people in the car is not driving the wrong way, But when the car headed towards the cliff, no one in the car dared to speak out to remind the driver. The underlying safety valve of the democratic system. When it comes to democracy, many people's first reaction is low-efficiency politicians slandering each other and society being divided. Yes, if we only look at the surface, democracy is indeed a mess. Inefficiency caused by compromise. A bill requires repeated wrangling. Benefit distribution must take into account all aspects, which often makes people who are used to acting vigorously and resolutely feel crazy. Exhaustion from information noise. The media exposes dirty information every day, and politicians' underpants are stripped clean. Social networks are filled with populist and extreme opposition. But please don't be blinded by these noises. The real power of a democratic system often lies in its underlying structure. It is a distributed system with built-in disaster recovery mechanism and multi-active backup. The correction power of peaceful rotation if it is not done while the votes will wait. The change of political power does not require bloodshed and sacrifice. No conspiracy or coup is needed. This is the greatest invention of human political civilization. Immunity to power checks. The separation of the three powers and the constant surveillance of the fourth power, the media. This ensures that no individual or political party can monopolize everything with impunity. Self-healing vitality. Those noises and demonstrations are essentially detoxification of society. The problem is thrown into the sunlight for analysis, although it looks ugly. But once the pustules are popped, the system can regain health. Democracy can never guarantee that only saints will be elected, but it provides the most solid bottom line. When the government makes mistakes, the people have the power and the channels to legally replace it. The underlying logic that determines your and my destiny. When evaluating a country's system, don't just focus on how many high-rise buildings it has built. How long is the cross-sea bridge? This is all cold cement. What you really need to ask is, when ordinary people at the bottom encounter injustice, are there any channels to appeal? When this giant ship veers off course, does society have the ability to apply the brakes? When your legal property is threatened by power, can the law be your last shield? What totalitarianism is best at is not developing the economy, but developing fear. It is not governing the country, but governing the people. History has repeatedly proven that totalitarianism can pile resources into wonders, but it is difficult to turn society into a paradise. Authoritarian systems appear to be efficient because they minimize discussion costs. But the price is to maximize the error correction cost. An authoritarian state is like a car that drives very fast. The accelerator is hard, the steering wheel is hard, but the brakes may not work well. In an authoritarian system, the biggest risk is not doing it wrong, but no one dares to tell you you did it wrong. The authoritarian system can achieve great things in the short term, but it can also turn great things into catastrophe with a single misjudgment. Democracy seems noisy because it allows contradictions to be brought to the table. Authoritarianism seems quiet often because conflicts are suppressed underground. Democracy does not guarantee the election of saints, but it provides a mechanism for replacing fools. The greatest value of democracy is not that the government is always right, but that the government does not dare to be wrong for a long time. In a democratic country, it's ugly when the media strips politicians of their underwear, but at least you know who is stealing and who is cheating. Who is acting? Corruption in democratic systems does not exist, but is more likely to be exposed and held accountable. It is more difficult to solidify into a hereditary privilege. When judging a system, don't just look at how many tall buildings have been built. It depends on whether ordinary people have a way out when they encounter injustice. Many people like to say, I am just an ordinary worker. I just want to make good money. What does politics have to do with me? But the reality is extremely harsh. Will the savings in your hand depreciate overnight? Will your children face an open and prosperous age or a cruel war in the future? Can your little family move freely and choose their lifestyle? The answers to all these are all written in the system architecture where you are. The dividends of an authoritarian system are often stunning and short-term, while the value of a democratic system is long-term and trivial but touching to the soul. We understand these grand concepts not to worship or disdain anyone, but to stay awake throughout a long life, because this determines what we want for ourselves and the next generation. Living in a sophisticated machine that requires no brain, or living in a wilderness full of flaws but our own. I hope this hardcore content can bring you a different perspective. If you find it inspiring, please be sure to long press and like. Subscribe to my channel and tell me what you really think in the comment section. See you next time.